Oh, wow, what a pleasure, what a privilege. Thank you all for coming. I really came here to deliver a message, which is that we know the persecution that this government is engaged in, and we are with you. We Americans that stand for free speech are with you, and we will fight right alongside you until the very bitter end. It was a strange experience yesterday because after years, the BBC of sort of flirting with me and suggesting I might have a chance to grace their program, finally they said, J.D. Vance, they said, do you agree with J.D. Vance's speech? You know, clutching their pearls. And I said, damn right I agree with that speech. Are you kidding me? And so I went on the BBC World Service, and it felt very, it felt like something had changed. The vibe had shifted, as the Zoomers will say. You know, we're still uncovering this monstrosity of the censorship industrial complex. It was just, 2 years ago, the idea that there was a deep state was considered a conspiracy theory. Now even Vox, which is one of our most important left-wing media outlets, does explainers on what is the deep state. We know that there exists a deep state. We thought we had characterized it. We thought we had understood it, kind of gotten to the bottom of it. And then Elon Musk arrived in Washington, D.C. and started to move fast and break things. You don't really understand what exists until you start to change things. And what happened was they just started demanding access into our many government agencies. And the first one that said, no, we're not going to let you in, even though Elon is the official representative of the President of the United States, and Article 2 of our Constitution makes very clear that the president shall oversee the executive branch and all of its agencies. And they just told him, no, we're not going to give you access to our internal files, to what's going on here. So they did the right thing and they shut it down. They just shut it down. They said this agency is a rogue agency. It's an agency with totalitarian aspirations, if you're going to defy the Constitution so brazenly like that. And that's what they did. And they withdrew all of USAID's staff from abroad. We then started to, it's a huge thing. We then started to take a second look at this agency. It's called United States Agency for International Development. Well, how good of a job has it done with international development exactly? It started in 1961. Here we are over 64 years after its founding, and the countries in which it's operating at an aid level, we know that it's failed. That we know that countries develop by harnessing their internal resources, their commitment to delaying gratification, hard work, saving on principle, strong families, strong communities, infrastructure, manufacturing. These are the basics of economic development. That's not what USAID is doing. And they'll say we engage in soft power. And what we've really uncovered is that this was an organization involved centrally in financing the rise of the censorship industrial complex. And the picture that we had started to understand 2 years ago this June, we held a meeting here with Russell Brand. My friend Winston Marshall did an incredible job organizing it. We know that that event, by the way, terrified the deep state organizations. They knew that this was being elevated to a new level. But what we've discovered, the United States Agency for International Development, is that they were engaged in what we would call, or what they call, information operations, disinformation operations in foreign countries. And the most extraordinary part is that they had been financing, since around 2007, 2008, they had decided that they were going to take control over what's called independent investigative journalism worldwide. Some of you may remember the biggest scoop that these groups did was called the Panama Papers. This was exposing this sort of money laundering coming out of Russian oligarchs, picked up uncritically worldwide by newspapers. The organization that oversaw it was the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, or OCCRP. It is a wholesale creation of the United States Agency for International Development. And the key moment here occurred when some of their partner organizations, in particular, I'll single out a German television network called NDR, decided to investigate, turn the tables on OCCRP and ask them what was going on. And they got on record, USAID officials saying, yes, we created this organization. The original money came from the State Department's Narcotics Enforcement Bureau, and then they laundered it through USAID. And on camera, one of the USAID persons said that, well, we did that because we didn't think it would help the journalists to be associated with law enforcement. I mean, you think? So the picture you get, though, and so what it's doing is it's taking intelligence, it's the intelligence agencies that are basically laundering these strategic leaks of information through OCCRP, and then it goes through the mainstream news media, and it looks like legitimate journalism. What real, heavy metal journalism looks like is what Julian Assange does, and I have some disagreements with him around failure to redact some sensitive qualities of it, but it's, to pardon my French, heavy metal journalism is kind of a shit show. I mean, you're releasing incredibly sensitive docs, everybody goes absolutely crazy, and then the head of it lands in a London prison for several years. That's what it looks like. It doesn't look like everyone applauding and getting Pulitzer Prizes and receiving polite company. This is a strategic operation to gain control over international investigative journalism, and that's what they've done. And so it's OCCRP, another group called the Independent Committee for Investigative Journalism, and they have basically financed and made a set of journalism organizations across the Western world dependent on the intelligence agencies. They would then use these strategic leaks as a basis then for demanding censorship. They created the disinformation primer that as one of the strategies they used in order to demand censorship, not just around the world, but in the United States, was to do advertiser boycotts like the kind they carried out against Facebook, and which ultimately forced Mark Zuckerberg to buckle to them in 2020, and like the kind they carried out against X after Elon Musk took over, and of course, which he, you may remember in maybe his finest moment in a New York Times event, said, "Go F yourself." It's a Christian gathering, so I'm trying to be sensitive with the language. The language of journalism is slightly more rough. So that was really Elon's one of his finest hours, and that was, I think, in some ways the moment where I think the censorship industrial complex knew that they had really met their match. So look, we're back on the front foot, guys. They're moving in ways that I had not expected them to move so quickly. The wind is to our backs. We need to press our advantage forward. Just last year, we had two big victories. We defeated censorship legislation in Ireland, and then we went on to defeat censorship legislation in Australia. We want to carry that momentum forward here to the UK and push back against Keir Starmer's anarcho-tyranny and censorship regime. I'll end by saying this. For me, free speech is a spiritual quest. It's a spiritual event. For me, it requires faith. We've had some very dark moments where the hairs on the back of your neck rise up and you realize just how deep the totalitarianism was headed, just how far they were going, requiring us to believe lies and repeat lies, like the idea that one can change one's sex or that climate change is the end of the world. That's where we were headed, Inquisition levels of totalitarianism, and we are back on the front foot, and I look forward to building the resistance movement and getting more victories with all of you in the months and years ahead. Thank you very much.